Hi, welcome to Games Feed. Thanks for stopping by. I'm David, or Kimari, whichever you prefer. And today we're going to be reacting to, we're going to be watching a video by VaatiVidya, which is someone I've followed for quite a while for Dark Souls related content. And the name of this video is I played the final build of Elden Ring. And so we're going to take a look at this. Knowing VaatiVidya, he's not going to give out any spoilers, but I assume he's probably going to give a pretty good analysis of the gameplay without giving away too much and give us some information. So without further ado, let's hop right into it.
About spoilers. Everyone draws the line differently on how much they want to see of a game before they play it, but for me personally, it's here 2 weeks before release that things always kind of start to get awkward. You know, marketing starts to show too much, early copies of the game sometimes get into circulation, and it's now, more than any other point, that I think you have to be careful if you want to preserve some of your first experience.
I agree with that. One of my biggest problems with movies nowadays is like the final trailer before the release of the movie, and Marvel's terrible about this. You basically know the movie without having to go and pay for a ticket. You know exactly, if you've seen movies in your life, excuse me, which I think we all have, you're going to be able to kind of piece together probably what happens. Of course, there'll probably be a few plot twists, but I definitely agree with that with that statement about trailers and stuff giving away, and then there's leaks and stuff on top of that. People already claim to know like the next 5 Marvel movies and their whole story, you know. Let's keep going.
So this video does contain new information and new areas, but the footage I'm going to share with you is pretty tame. I'm only going to inform you of new game mechanics, and I'm mostly just going to talk about how the game has changed, specifically in the network test area and since the network test version. Recently, I was asked to sit down with the final build of the game, and I was told I could talk about pretty much everything, which is an overwhelming thought as a creator. Obviously, I'm very privileged to have been in this position, but
real quick, does that mean there's not going to be a day one patch? Because I find that kind of hard to believe. I mean, I know they're saying that it's the final build, but I'm wondering if they mean it's the final build before the day one patch. That's just something that I'm kind of curious about. I'm also very surprised that if they're giving him the final build 2 weeks before it releases, I'm surprised they're not making him sign in like an NDA. I'm sure there are some things that they said he couldn't talk about. But I'm surprised they're letting, like, I've even seen like videos with like new areas being shown, stuff like that. I'm surprised they're kind of being very willy-nilly about like the things that can be shown, especially around especially considering like the hype around the game. But maybe they think that'll actually act as like kind of a deterrent. If they're not like trying to keep it hush hush, then people might not dig too deep. If you want an example of something like that, well, the opposite of that happening, the Harry Potter books. They tried very, very hard to protect those, and it just made people try harder to spoil them. I'm not saying Elden Ring is as hyped as Harry Potter was, but, you know, I digress.
As you might imagine, being told this is kind of anxiety-inducing because you have the whole incredible game at your fingertips, but only for a short amount of time. So I wonder, what would you do? The logical thing is just to rush through a lot of the game. You know, your time is limited, but you can go everywhere and talk about everything, so you feel like you have to experience as much as you can, or else your content won't be as good as the competition's. Therefore, tons of creators and outlets are going to be vying for your attention with what they've found. I don't think this is necessarily wrong. I just think that you should know that it's going to be a free-for-all right now, and a lot of unique discoveries are going to be talked about, because
I'm almost worried that that's gonna like generate like a competition, or like you said, everyone's vying for your attention, so everyone's gonna be trying to find the biggest spoilers. And yeah, that is very bad. That's why there's probably only 1 or 2 creators I'll even watch. If I watch anything on it, it'll just be for like YouTube content. I won't probably be watching anything on my own because I want to be as blind as possible going in. But yeah, it almost creates like an arms race of who can get the biggest spoiler to get the most clicks, the most views, the most, you know, recognition, or, you know, whatever the motivations are. And I worry that the entire game may just be like figured out before it releases. And also, like I said, I don't know if there's gonna be a day one patch, because what I would imagine, if you're giving people the final build of the game, or the final build of the game, I would probably, if I was a developer, I'd remove some of that lore stuff and then put it back in on the day one patch. That does have the potential to cause bugs. I mean, that's just something that the developers have to decide if they're willing to take that risk.
This is an open world game, and you can run very far on torrent in 6 hours. One outlet in particular has been talking about their time with the final build.
I'm guessing that's the horse's name. I didn't even know that.
For weeks, and I read an area spoiler from them that I really wish I hadn't, so keeping that personal experience in mind, when I played the final build, the area that I explored the most was actually just the network test zone. I think I'd rather just talk about this area that we've all had a chance to see and experience.
Not all,
you know?
but...
So this is old footage of the network test, where I just went around looking at the scenery, and it'll be good to explain what's changed since this version. So the first thing from the network test that I can explain are these gargoyle statues and this fog wall that's behind them. These statues take something called Stone's Ward keys, and these keys are essentially Pharos lockstones from Dark Souls 2. They are a key that is limited in number that gets used up every time you use it. I found a few of these keys when I was playing through the game. You can actually choose one as a starting gift for your character, and I found a lot of these gargoyles and gates where they could be used, and every single time I used one, I got a special weapon or a special item. So clearly they're a way for you to get powerful gear or items, or maybe even unlock a shortcut, like they are in Dark Souls 2, I suppose. Next thing I want to say is that the UI has been updated. For example, health bars, focus bars, stamina bars, they all look a bit more worn, and they have a sort of golden embellishment around their edges. Here we have Kale. Kale sells very different things in the final build of the game. He no longer sells weapons, I believe, and he no longer sold me any spirit summons. He did sell something new called notes. These are essentially like memos from Sekiro. They're basically something you can read that tells you about a secret location or gives you a hint about something. Just that.
I think I mentioned this really quickly. I think I mentioned this while I was streaming the other day, but I'll say it here as well. It just surprises me that people thought that the network test was going to be the end all be all, like the final, like that's what the game was going to be. From Software has a history of making their betas and tests a bit easier, so people can test as much of the content as possible without, having to, try to. I mean, you have people who could beat, Dark Souls on their first run in 20 hours, but that's very few people. So I'm really surprised people thought that the game was just going to be that easy.
Then I was looking at that island, which is the Altar of Dragon Communion. In the network test, you could trade a dragon heart for Grail's Roar, but in the final build of the game, you can trade a dragon heart for one of 3 different dragon spell attacks. You can get Dragon Maw, which bites, you can get Dragon Claw, which swipes, and you can also get Dragon Fire, which was already in the network test somewhere else. So here is Stormfoot Catacombs, and this was one of the first dungeons that I explored, and it was here that I noticed, oh man, yeah, this is the final build of the game, because enemies were dropping their weapons. The items I was finding were way less powerful, just more like they were tuned to a character that was just starting out at the very start of the game. And the same goes for Groveside Cavern, which is just ahead here. I didn't get the Flask of Wondrous Physic from this boss, maybe as expected. That's a really powerful potion, and it was present in the network test, and that's when you realize, the network test had all of these powerful things, and this final build of the game was much harder because you started as, a normal starting character that didn't have spells or didn't have strong equipment, and, the game was harder as a result. A lot of people criticized the network test for being too easy, but it was too easy for a lot of people because we were playing with really powerful weapon arts and really powerful spells and things that had obviously been put in by the developers to make our experience more smooth.
And it was obvious.
Right here, actually, you see that fire that I just knocked that soldier into? I looked at that for the longest time when I was playing the final build because it had 3 butterflies fluttering around it. And at first I thought it was just a graphical improvement, but no, they've actually added the smoldering butterfly as a craftable resource that you can loot from a lot of the fires in the game. And it looks really pretty. In this area, I looted a few things. The item in this carriage,
sure.
I believe, is the flail, which is the hanging ball and chain. I also looted a greatsword, which I used throughout most of my playthrough, and ended up regretting, because I'm not much of a greatsword user. But in that camp, I also looted my first Ash of War, and it came with an item called a whetstone knife, which I believe is the method by which you apply Ashes of War at grace checkpoints. This knife is a key item, and I think you just get this knife whenever you loot your first Ash of War. I don't think it's something you actually have to find there. Another key item I found this in the demi-human cave, were tailoring tools, which enables armor alterations at sites of...
See, to be honest, I don't even really care for him giving like exact locations of where to find stuff. I think it takes away a little bit from the exploration. But I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not going to remember regardless, but I know there are some people who probably will. So even that's a little bit spoilery, but I'm not like super worried about that. You know, that's kind of like if you're playing a game and your buddy's around, and he's like, oh, hey, there's a potion in there. You're not really going to get mad. You know, so it is what it is. A lot of people are going to end up just looking up guides for this game anyways.
Of grace. For a long time, people were wondering if you could add or remove cloaks from certain sets of armor, and I can confirm that yes, you can add or remove cloaks for a small cost to your armor, and I assume you can change your armor in a myriad of different ways depending on the armor set, which is very, very
transmog.
Cool for the people who love fashion souls. Down here, I actually look through this veil. This is where the network test ends, and that leads towards sort of eastern Limgrave. Down there is a deep forest with bears and other really intimidating creatures. Honestly, going down there and venturing into this, you know, beyond where you don't have a map, it's intimidating because you get used to having the map in the network test, but when you don't have one, you're really looking out for those obelisks that give you a map and help to guide you where you're going, because you feel very lost, and the world feels even larger when you're lost, which is something I noticed. Here at the Post Town Remains, I cleared that out, and it's actually very similar to the network test in that Pumpkinhead is down there, and Sorceress Sellen is also still there, although there's been some visual upgrades to the cellar that she resides in, which looks nice. This roaming carriage in the network test gave you the Crucible set, but in the final build of the game, it gives you a Great Axe, which I didn't use.
I almost wish he hadn't covered the network test area and like been telling people that basically it's like different in these ways and it's harder and all that, because I would have loved to seen all these people just go in thinking it was the network test again, thinking they were just going to run through and one shot everything and have that moment of like, whoa, what the heck. And I don't even say that in a malicious way. That's a good moment. You know, when your expectations are subverted, and when you you know, just whenever you are surprised by something like that. I think that would have been a cool thing for a lot of people to experience. And a lot of people still will. Not everybody who plays this game is going to, you know, watch YouTube videos or whatever. But I almost wish he hadn't given that away.
But I assume is pretty powerful and a pretty insane strength build weapon. So we're heading towards southern Limgrave now. And as I was in this area in the final build, there was like a little war going on. I think it was towards the left here. There was a war going on between some soldiers of Godric and some demi-humans that were having like an all-out brawl here. I let them fight each other, always helping the losing side and evening the odds until they were all dead. And this game is just cool, like drawing you towards points of interest that are always going on around the map.
See, I didn't get to play the network test. I didn't get an invite. So thanks for that from software. No, but so... I wonder if the AI is like really good. Like there's a lot of AI that'll fight each other, and you know, I just wonder how the AI behaves as opposed to other Dark Souls games and Bloodborne, Demon Souls, Sekiro, everything. Because I mean, those games occasionally had something similar to that or something like that, where you know two enemies would kind of clash. What comes to mind as well is like Dying Light 2, you know, is really good about, you know, you being able to, one, kind of manipulate the UI, the AI, and also that the AI will a group of zombies or whatever they're called in that game, they're not going to fixate on one target, which means like if they're attacking you and someone else gets closer, there's just zombies going for the closest thing. And if they're attacking something else and you get closer, it can also happen to you as well. Point being, I wonder how good the AI in this game is going to be. I have high hopes for it.
I thought that was interesting. But speaking of the map, we couldn't go here in the network test, but there's a giant landmass to the south, and on that landmass there is a walking island that you would have seen in the early trailers for the game.
Yeah, everyone knows about this.
I figured out what
Maybe
these
not where it
islands
was
are
at,
for.
but-
They have to do with a mechanic in the game called Remembrance. And Remembrance, I believe, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe Remembrance is a way of duplicating boss souls, which obviously is very useful because, a lot of boss souls...
So real quick before he explains, I hope this is what he's about to say. And if not, then oh well. But I wonder if he's going to say that, like, basically you can resummon bosses. And if so, that's really good. And I bet they got that idea from all the really good mods for Dark Souls 3 and Dark Souls Remastered, where you could refight bosses if you were like stuck or whatever. Because a lot of those mods were meant to be very hard. And so if you weren't like the best players or even a really good player, you would pretty much need to, be able to out-level it. So they would let you go back and fight bosses again. If so, that'd be great. I hope it's not just like he's saying, like duplicating the souls in the sense of like you just do something, you take an item and you get the souls. I hope you have to actually fight them again. That adds a lot of, just it adds more depth to the game. Some people might say it's like, kind of like just padding the runtime, but I would disagree if you said that.
In Dark Souls games are able to be transposed into weapons, and you might want more than one of those souls to get more than one weapon from them. So those islands do serve a purpose. So in this footage, I warp away from the dragon-burnt ruins, but
I don't think he actually like really elaborated on it, but it sounds like you don't actually refight them, but I don't know.
Make sure you explore the dragon-burnt ruins in the final build. It's very different. If you like the Twin Blade, that's where you can find the Twin Blade, and there is another chest there with some just incredible loot. It'll just blow you away. You might recall, in the network test, the dragon-burnt ruins gave you the Crimson Talisman, which increases the amount of health you would have had on your character. Talismans function like rings did in Dark Souls, and rings in Elden Ring are more like items that you use with a story significance, so that's why they're called talismans in this game. That's what Miyazaki said, anyway. But talismans in this game seem to be really interesting. I found a lot of talismans that related to the type of weapon I was using. For example, there was a Twin Blade talisman that increases the amount of damage done by the final attack in your Twin Blade flurry. There was a Curved Sword talisman, which increases the amount of guard counter damage you do with your curved swords. And there was an Axe talisman that increases the amount of damage done by charge attacks with your axe. So the talismans that you find are actually very specific in a lot of cases to the type of build that you're going for. Oh, and another thing I found interesting in the final build was the scarcity of smithing stone shards. In the network test on this plateau that we're on right now, back there was a statue that gave you 6 of them if you broke it. Right in front of me there used to be one here as loot, and all of the giants in this area used to drop 1 smithing stone shard every time you killed one. In the final build, the giants didn't drop a shard every time. That statue back there only gave me 3, and the smoldering giant up here, for example, in the network test, he gives you 3, but in the final build, he gave me none. The only place I found a lot of smithing stone shards were the caves where there was lots of miners, and I guess that makes a lot of sense. So you're definitely going to be incentivized to seek out caverns and miners and loot the
From Software has always been really good at that. They've always been really good at kind of marrying the lore and the items of the area together. Where they've always been really good at making it make sense, and that's excellent. That's really good. A lot of games, they kind of have like their story and their combat and their world, and it's almost 2 or 3 different separate things. But FromSoft, just kudos to them. They've always been very good at like what enemies drop makes sense. Like when you play a fantasy game and a wolf drops a plate helmet, that doesn't make sense. And I think there is a little bit of that in some of the Souls games as well. However, you know, like a werewolf probably wouldn't have like a potion, you know, something like that. But I digress. Either way, just they've always been really good at that, and I hope that with a huge open world now, like that just gets kind of like just scaled to a 1,000. Like that'd be really cool.
Shards from that place in order to upgrade your weapon. So yeah, a lot of the stuff that I'm describing does make the game harder for sure. Right up here, for example, this Everjail, it doesn't contain the Bloodhound anymore. Instead, it contains a Crucible Knight boss, and I couldn't beat this guy. I didn't try very many times, admittedly, but he basically one-shot me and was very difficult to defeat, which just makes me so excited to play the final game and beat my head against a wall until the wall breaks, until I can beat bosses that give me trouble, because that's how I kind of play. I get pretty stubborn about beating a boss, and I couldn't do that in this.
Absolutely. What's his name? The Demon King or whatever. After you kill the giant skeleton. I'm terrible with names in real life and in games. So you just have to know who I'm talking about. But I think it's like the ancient demon, whatever. He beat me probably 50 times, and you know I finally beat him, but he was a very tough fight, and that was all in like one night. Like I just spent hours just dying, running back, and then you've got the harpoon guy shooting at you, and every now and then he gets a lucky shot, and like that's like it was like half or more of your health, so you've got to use a flask, and you're not even at the boss yet. So I definitely get what he means. Another thing I was going to say really quickly was it kind of shows you that when it comes to these games, we're all like a mixture of like masochists and like tough as nails fighters, because we get excited. Like the harder we hear Elden Ring is, a little piece of us gets more and more excited. And I think there's a lot that goes into that with like the bragging rights and the pride and all that. But I think it's just funny to think it's like at least a little bit of a masochism, and then all that other stuff kind of tied in on top of it. But it's just funny that we get really excited when we hear like, oh yeah, man, this is like the hardest game in the world. This is ridiculous. There's, like blah, blah, blah. And that's great. But when you look at the older, like really hard games like The Lion King and stuff, like no one wants to go back and play those. I mean, completely different genre and completely different era of gaming, but just funny to kind of look at that comparison a little bit.
Final build, I couldn't set my mind to defeating something and spend hours on it, because I would miss out on so much more of the game. The Scavenger's Shack is something you should explore in the final build, by the way. Don't just assume it's empty. It's not empty at all in the final build. And you'll notice I haven't talked about spirit summons yet. Spirit summons were harder to find in the final build, at least in my experience. The summoning bell, the item you get to summon them, is found in the early game, so you don't have to worry about that. But the summons themselves, the items, I only found, I think, 2 in the final build. I could be wrong. But honestly, the one that I found was so powerful. It was called Soldiers of Godric, and it summoned 2 knights. One of them was a melee fighter, and the other one wielded a crossbow and stood in the back. And I mean, they were still really powerful. I don't think the final build has changed the power level of spirit summons much at all.
Okay.
But then the spirit summons that you summon do use FP, so the strength of a summon is dependent on how much FP it consumes.
Really?
So this is an easy way for From Software to tweak the power of spirit summons in the future if some are used too often,
Make them
I'm sure they'll
cost
have
more
data
mana.
on that. There are some spirit summons I found that used so much FP to summon that I couldn't summon them with my FP bar. I had to upgrade my mind stat in order to even use them. The
Really?
Soldiers
Okay.
of Godric
That's
summons were
kind of
found
predictable, I
in
would
this
think.
jellyfish graveyard, by the way. Oh, another thing that happened that I forgot to mention was that I was riding my
what is
mount
up with these
on
jellyfish? There's like some, of course. Actually, I'll jump back like 5 seconds. Okay. Well, anyways, there's like I saw like some red ones, some blue ones. Like I said, I wasn't able to play the network test, so maybe some of you guys saw that, and I didn't. And if so, yeah, comment down below like what's the if you have any idea like what the deal is with those guys. They look really cool. That only From Software could put jellyfish in the middle of a grassy plain, and people go, yeah, okay.
Beach, and all of a sudden it started to rain down with these golden leaves from the Erd tree, and I noticed that my character actually got a buff at this moment. I thought that was a really cool dynamic sort of weather effect. I don't know what the buff did, but the thought that you can just randomly get a buff as an environmental effect is pretty cool, and I can imagine that.
So I've noticed like you see all this like the sand and like the fog, and you know like even when you look off into the distance you can't really see like super far, and my guess would be like that's 50% environment and like atmosphere, and 50% that it makes it easier to run on like consoles and weaker PCs and stuff, because from what I've heard, I mean, this game's got to be massive, and everything like right or in your immediate area is like beautiful. Like I mean, even this freeze frame, like there's some motion blur, but like you can see like all this detail on these leaves and like all this stuff. So I bet that's kind of what happened. Is maybe they were running into like performance issues, or maybe before they even got to that point, like they knew, like we even need to go with this like waxy style of art, and we're gonna have to like somehow cut down the draw distance, because like look right over there, like these bushes and tree, you can't see any of that, so that means the game's not having to render it completely like it is this step. And so I imagine that makes it a lot easier on the hardware
happening, and you being like, yeah, I'm gonna fight the boss that's nearby with this buff active that will give me an advantage. Oh, and if you go north past Stormvale, you'll actually discover a shortcut hidden in the bushes
that is. Okay.
Cuts through the cliff side and turns into a cave, and then you're on the edge of the cliff, and it takes you to an area that's not Stormvale. I was always thinking that Stormvale would sort of be like a funneling point for progression, but it seems like you can bypass it and keep going, which is really interesting.
Interesting.
And
yeah, for sure.
After making it to the end of Stormvale Castle, I see why you might want to bypass Stormvale Castle. Okay. Godric, the demigod boss at the end of this place, I thought I was pretty geared at the end of my session, but I tried him about 3 times and I just walked away because I was getting absolutely destroyed. And I thought
every video, I haven't watched very many, but every video I've seen, like this one and I think 2 others, but none of them had like a lot of spoilers, and I knew the creators, that's why I watched them. But they've all said the same thing, like especially Godric, and he was talking about that other boss that was basically one-shotting him and stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. I kind of doubt it, but like from what I'm hearing around a lot, I mean, this game may be harder than Dark Souls 3. And that would be great. That'd be awesome. I would be totally down for that. I mean, that there's in some senses there are going to be some senses where you can't really draw a comparison. Like I think with like out in the open world, you can just easily run away from enemies, especially with a mount and everything. Whereas in Dark Souls, you couldn't do that.
Was doing pretty well up until that point.
Yeah,
and after exploring Stormvale for a little while, I'm not sure exactly.
You could do that. You just run past everything to the boss room. But generally, by that time you were doing that, you had already cleared everything and you just didn't feel like doing it again. You're like, forget this. I'm just going to go kill the boss, get those souls. And you didn't want to die on the way back to get your souls either. So you just wanted to run straight there, retrieve your souls, fight the boss, get killed, and rinse and repeat until you won the fight.
When this happens, but eventually you get invited to Round Table Hold, which, as you probably know by now, is a hub area. And it's amazing. I don't want to spoil why I think it's amazing. You've seen maybe one screenshot of it, but just the atmosphere awesome. And the NPCs, maybe one screenshot of it.
That looks awesome. Look at that. That looks really good. How it's like, I mean, first, obviously, you notice the big thing in the middle of the room, but like you've got like these, they look like maybe priests or something, you know, kind of the statues around the table. You've got all the chairs around the table. It's like it's Knights of the Round, essentially, is what it seems like it's going for. That's really cool. You've got like all the swords. I think those are swords. I'm like 99% sure, like angling down into the pit. And I'm willing to bet that that's like a bonfire, especially since this is like a hub area. I highly doubt it's anything malicious. It's like, you know, I bet it's going to have some part to do with the story of like the eternal bonfire, or, you know, whatever. So I keep looking that way. I've been kind of moving my camera back and forth with this new setup to try to get a comfortable, I did it again, a comfortable spot for it. So yeah, let's continue.
Of it, but just the atmosphere and the NPCs in this hub area make it so fucking enchanting and incredible. I was absolutely in love with this hub area from the time that I played. So I hope I'm walking the line with spoilers on a pretty good level. Just look forward to so many things. There's so many things to look forward to. I think the last thing I'm going to leave you with is...
One of the biggest things I'm excited for in this game, I'm a guy who likes cosmetics and fantasy games, is all like the completely different styles of like gear and like theming around the gear and stuff that I've seen in different people's playthroughs. I mean, they're completely different. I think in Dark Souls 3, it had a couple pieces of unique gear, but a lot of them followed like the same tropes, or like, you know, like you had like, I need to go back and replay it. You had the knights, the guy in all the black armor that you run into, and you can either do his quest or you can kill him. So you can be able to buy his armor and his armor, shield, and hammer from the merchant at the main area. And then so you had that, and then you also had, sorry, I kind of blanked. You had like that, and then like all of the armor looked like, other than like the mage's robes, all of the armor had a look to it that was like very medieval, very you know, high fantasy. I'm noticing a lot of almost like Middle Eastern inspiration from some of the gear sets I've seen. I've definitely seen some Asian inspiration from some of the weapons. Like if you showed me this without any context, this guy looks like he's from the Middle East, but in a different area, probably because of, you know, all the trees and grass, and, you know, just the landscape doesn't really suit that area. In the past, he's from the Middle East. He's fighting a war in some different area. You know, he looks, you know, Arabic with the curved sword, you know, on the horse or camel or whatever. And, you know, I think that's really, really cool that they're drawing all these, you know, the more different armor sets they have in the game, the better. You know, I hate to just see all the armor look really, really similar.
This clip, this piece of video that they gave me to show off, there's a painting here, and when you touch it...
Okay, so this looked like a turban when he was on the horse.
A little fog dissipates, and something in your world has changed. Guess what it is? On the painting, there's a visual. It shows a part of Limgrave, and if you go to where this painting depicts, a short event will happen. And I love this mechanic because it really rewards players that are paying attention to the world around them and the...
These are like, I wonder what these are supposed to be. They're like miniature trolls, but they're like shape and look of their face, their head and eyes is like really off-putting.
Map, and
I like it a lot.
If you don't know where a place is, it might feel a bit like a treasure hunt and trying to find it from contextual clues. I think this is such a cool thing. I know a lot of you might be wondering where I've been for the last month or so.
Another thing I've noticed about the combat, we're getting close to the end of this, guys, I promise. Another thing I've noticed about the combat, and I'm not saying like this in any kind of like way like it's going to be easier. I thought something scared me right there for a second. I'm not saying this in like any kind of way like it's going to be easier than Dark Souls. Like I said, I just got done talking about everyone saying it's harder, and that's great. But I have mainly heard that about like bosses and stuff. The like regular enemies kind of seem a little slower than in previous games, especially when you have something like Bloodborne and Sekiro, and to a little bit lesser of an extent Dark Souls 3, which had a little bit more of an aggressive playstyle than 1 and 2. The enemies seem to have a little bit longer drawback to give you a little bit more prep time, and then maybe that's that's kind of one of those steps that they're doing to appeal to the casual player, or maybe that's just all the enemies I've seen. The bosses still look normal, but a lot of the enemies I've seen around the world, it just seems like you have a lot more of a grace window for like dodging and stuff.
Since my last video, I haven't posted on Twitter. I didn't make any videos, even though I had 2 lore videos planned. I've been working on Soul Arts, which is the art book that I've been curating. Okay. I had to write over 100 entries. I had to work on so many design elements of the book, and finally, just the other day, we launched the digital edition to Kickstarter backers, which was really exciting. And in April, the final version of the book.
Like, is that what he's been writing it? Like, that's a book about like the soul, like the stuff in Elden Ring. If so, that's insane that they're already writing books.
Will be sent out to
this game's
everyone
gonna be so
who
big. It's
pre-ordered a copy through Kickstarter or pre-ordered through the publisher's site. I'll leave a link to the book that you can pre-order if that's something that's interesting to you. But yeah, now that I'm done with that for the most part, I can focus on Elden Ring. I'm going to have, hopefully, 2 more lore videos talking about the network test lore and also the lore that I've gleaned from the final build.
I love his lore videos.
And I don't think talking about lore is really a spoiler, because I don't think learning about the fundamentals of a story can really spoil your game experience, you know? I feel like learning about the fundamentals will enrich your experience when you do.
FromSoft games are the only IP in the world where you could say that and the other person would have to go, maybe you're right. Maybe not literally the only game or the only IP in the world, but saying things like, "Oh yeah, just knowing what happened and what's gonna probably happen," you know, that's not spoilers in this game. That's just, you know, whatever. Who cares about that? I just want to go fight bosses and get loot and blah blah blah. Explore the new open world, and it's super funny that he doesn't want to tell too much about the world, and yet he's like telling you about like the story. That's like completely different than what you would kind of normally be used to seeing. I mean, it's great. I kind of agree with him, because I'm not good at when it comes to like exploration in games. I'm good at like the mechanics of games. So like Dark Souls and stuff like that, I can not easily, but pretty well, you know, breeze through it. And, you know, beat the game, get in a new game plus, and keep going and all that until it really ramps up in difficulty. But without like the lore videos, I would have like, I would know you were undead in a little bit. Like I'd know what like hollow means when you die too many times and you lose your mind or whatever. You know, you slowly go insane, and that you're trying to relight the first flame. But that's probably all I would really know, because I'm bad at exploration. I don't find a lot of the side quests. I don't, you know. When I play a game, especially the first time, I'm like, I want to kill all the bosses, get the best gear, and beat the last boss when it comes to RPGs. Now, I am noticing as I'm getting older and stuff, my playstyle is changing a lot. I'm starting to care a bit more about story. I want to find everything. I want to see, you know, what's hidden, you know, stuff like that. But it's funny that in, you know, From Software IPs, except maybe Sekiro, the story is not a spoiler.
Play Elden Ring. So there are a few more videos coming, and that is the goal for this channel, is to enrich your experience with the games that we love, and I hope that I achieved that in this video. I know it's an awkward line that I had to walk, but I think I did okay. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
It was a really, really good video. He did, like I figured he would. He did an excellent job. What? I don't know how I got unsubscribed to him. I definitely was. I watch his stuff all the time. Anyways, I mean, he did a really, really good job about not giving out like crazy spoilers. And really, he didn't. I don't think he really gave you or me or anybody anything other than like, hey, this game's a lot harder than you think it's gonna be. And you're gonna want to explore because things aren't where you think they're gonna be. And also watch out for this because it's really not what you think it's gonna be. And that's great. You know, I hope that extends into the rest of the game. I hope that, they're able to continue to subvert expectations. And that, again, another thing FromSoft's been really, really good at in their previous games. FromSoft is almost like taking on this mantle of kind of like, like the Blizzard of old, or the CD Projekt Red of old, and are the Square Enix with like Final Fantasy 14 now, where like they can almost do no wrong because their stuff is just so good. You just expect that out of them. And even if something seems off, you're a lot of times just kind of like, eh. Now, FromSoft is not great on their technical side of their games, like with what's going on with Dark Souls 3 Online right now. But that's completely different, neither here nor there for the purpose of this video. We'll take a look at a comment or two. So ready for the Elden Bling is going to be... See, and it's exactly what I'm talking about to the reply say. The transmog is going to be... Or transmog. The Fashion Souls is going to be so much fun. The Elden Bling, I love it. I didn't realize this had already been 40 minutes, so I actually will wrap it up. Really quick before I go, I have started streaming on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Kimari94, Kimari 94. So please feel free to give the channel a follow, and when we go live, I will, you'll get a notification, and you can come and stop by and say hello. I've streamed once or twice, and I've just gotten a new camera. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you can definitely tell. I've just gotten a new microphone. If you've heard any of my previous videos, you can probably definitely tell. This is the first video I've done with this microphone, so hopefully it gets uploaded correctly and nothing crazy happens with the audio. But I'm really excited because this is the first time since I've made my very, very first video, like years and years ago, that I've had good audio equipment. I've had pretty good, video equipment. And it really motivates me to try to make some great content. So I do hope that's, what happens, because I haven't been really happy with the quality of the content ever on my channel because of like microphone issues or bad just webcams and, stuff like that. Granted, this still is a webcam, but it's a good webcam. So if you liked this, not all my content's going to be like reaction content. There's going to be actual gameplay, stream highlights, etc., unless I make like a second channel for stream highlights. But if you like, my personality, if you, would like to see some, higher quality content, maybe you liked my, if you go back and look at some of the old videos, like, oh, I like the theme of it, but, the quality just sucks. Well, hopefully that's going to be getting a lot better. So if you did enjoy this and you want to see more like this, please feel free to subscribe. And, also feel free to go follow us on Twitch. I'm a lot different on Twitch, I would say. I'm a lot more comfortable. Whenever I record, I get very nervous, but I'm starting to get better, especially now that I have more confidence with having a good microphone and a much better camera. So hopefully I can build up some confidence, make some better videos for you guys. But if you did watch the whole video, thank you so much. I don't make content to get, views. I don't make content thinking it's going to go viral or anything like that. I make content because I love to make content. I love to, give my thoughts and my opinions on things. And if you did stay until this point, all the way till the end, it means so much to me that, you thought what I was saying was important enough to still be here. So, but I'm not going to ramble on forever. There's a lot of good things coming for the channel: intros, outros, Twitch streams, YouTube videos. We're going to be in it for the long haul. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want to be in it for the long haul, please, feel free to subscribe or just check back in every now and then. You don't have to subscribe. It's not a big deal. Thank you so much again for watching. I hope you guys have a great day, great rest of your night, whatever time you're watching this. And yeah, have a great one. Peace.